What should my kid pack for college?
I don't know.
How much spending money?
I don't know.
What should we talk about?
I don't know.
So how can I be sure that my kid is keeping up with his classwork?
I don't know. What are we going to do if there are no in-person classes? I don't know.
College Ready 2020, a crash course preparing college parents for the road ahead. Hello, I'm Andrea McCarren, your host for College Ready 2020. Getting college students ready for back to school is a big responsibility for every college parent, and this is especially true in 2020, the year of the global coronavirus pandemic. At this moment, colleges and universities are still trying to determine whether or not they'll allow students on campus in the fall. And of course, as we have seen throughout the coronavirus pandemic, plans can change quickly, as they did in the spring of this year when colleges around the country canceled in-person classes and transitioned quickly to remote learning. Educational experts and social scientists agree that regardless of the decisions that are made about reopening dorms, classrooms, labs, playing fields, and performance spaces, online learning will be a permanent part of college education in the post-pandemic world. In this episode, we explore how parents can help their college students succeed when their instruction is remote. To help us understand the parents' role in online learning, we turn to Janice Nikkel.
My name is Janice Nikkel,
Director of the Parent-Family Network at Trinity Western University.
My job is to create remarkable experiences for families when they send their students to our university.
And we also get insights from Whitney White.
My name is Whitney White,
Director of Parent and Family Programs at the University of Cincinnati.
We partner with parents to support their student success at the university by engaging them and informing them about their students' experience.
We first spoke to Janice and Whitney about lessons learned by students, parents, and colleges during their sudden and unexpected transition to digital learning in the spring of 2020. These experiences will certainly shape the course of events on college campuses this fall.
One of the biggest takeaways has been that we can do it. We can pivot on a dime and reimagine what learning can look like. And knowing that over-communicating has been super helpful and that our students are quite capable and that we still play a role as parents.
We have learned a lot about how resilient our students are and how we have all been forced to pivot, and we really did that quickly and creatively. And we've learned a lot in the process about how we all learn, how we work together, how we can best support each other, and the kinds of supports that are needed most. And it's really made us reevaluate how we're doing things to make sure we're supporting everyone in the best possible way. This has really pushed us all to a new level of creativity.
One thing that this whole pandemic has done has brought together our university in a way like nothing else has been able to. Typically at universities, they're very much a silo effect that happens. And so everyone's just so focused on their own little areas. But what this has done, it has brought every department together. And our professors have absolutely dropped everything to make sure they have been part of the town halls, educating themselves in courses and how to make this a remarkable experience for our students. Watching our admissions team work with our professors, watching our development team work with our admissions team. Oh my gosh, it excites me so much to see. If I was a student this fall, you would be getting the A game of every professor at our university. I can guarantee it. They want this university to succeed. They want their students to succeed. They want them to learn, and they know it's different. It gets me fired up. Obviously, you can tell my voice just got all fired up here, but I actually think they're going to get the best version of their profs this fall that they've ever had.
When this happened in the spring and we all had to pivot quickly, faculty quickly transitioned their classes to the online environment. And I think they really rose to the occasion with that, partially because they wanted to make sure that they kept their teaching quality up, but partially because a pandemic like this sort of forces us to rethink how we're delivering our coursework, and we had to rise to the occasion. Our university has done a tremendous job of helping our faculty learn how to transition their class to the online environment. We already have a wealth of resources for our faculty, several platforms that students use to learn in the classroom that can be used to really engage them online, and toolkits for faculty to create engaging online course experiences. And they really started offering that and pushing that really with faculty, and faculty really participated in that and took it in, and they have just risen to the occasion. And I think we needed that moment in the spring to pivot. And I'm not going to say there weren't some bumps in teaching in the spring, because that was a new territory for all of us. But now they have had that experience and they have learned the tools, because like Janice said, this experience has brought us out of our silos and forced us to collaborate to create the best possible experience during this time. And what students are going to find in the fall is that they're going to get the best of that, because it has all been created in this very purposeful way throughout this summer to give them an engaging online experience in the fall.
Colleges and universities are using a number of different terms to describe their non-traditional learning experiences outside of the classroom. Terms such as remote learning, distance learning, multi-access learning, online programs, and virtual experiences. In many cases, schools give their own unique meaning to these labels, and so we recommend that you become familiar with the lexicon used by your student's school. There are important distinctions between the various types of remote learning models, and knowing these distinctions will help you support your students. But regardless of what nomenclature the school decides to use, each student and each family will have important decisions to make about the upcoming school year. If the campus is open, should they attend in person? If the campus is closed and all classes are virtual, should they participate this year? We spoke with our guests about the factors students and parents should take into account when making this tough call.
I think as a parent, you have to figure out the health risks to your own students. So if your student is health compromised, you'd have to look and say, okay, what is this university doing to make sure that every safety measure is taken, every precaution is taken? And I think by and large, every university is trying to do that, because universities are only as good as how many students we get. And so we want to make sure we're following all the health protocols so that it's safe for our students. But if your student is health compromised, and that student might be at risk if they were to integrate on a campus setting, at least in our case, we have made our classes so fluid that you could be in the classroom or online and you would overlap. It would be synchronous. So you could be either place. And so when you feel comfortable to come back to campus, that parent should have the conversation with their student about what that would look like. And I think it's our job as a university to make sure parents feel at ease that we are doing everything possible to ensure that their student will be supported and in a safe place.
It's a very individual decision for each family on what they're comfortable with and what type of experience they're looking for their student and what their student is hoping for this fall. They have to consider those health factors and various plans that universities may have regarding in-person or online classes and what they're looking for in that regard. And when they do return, I think the biggest thing that we are really trying to help our parents do is really to partner with us on helping their students understand the importance of following the precautions that we're putting in place, really talking to the students about how important it is to practice good hand hygiene and social distance and wear your mask. And even though it might feel silly because this isn't what we're used to doing, especially when we're hanging out with our friends, but that it's really, really important for the entire community that they adhere to those precautions.
Clearly, student health is the number one consideration, but there are certainly other very important considerations to be taken into account.
Of course, whether your courses that you need to graduate are being offered online, that would be a consideration. And because our university is so community-minded, it is essential for us that we create some kind of online community, someplace, somehow to recreate what makes our university so unique. But every university will be facing the same thing. So the things that stand out at each individual university, you need to figure out, okay, do they have the courses that I need? Will they be offered? What will this look like? Would it be better to go somewhere else? Would it be better to take a gap year? At the end of the day, every university is saying, no, we will have what you need because we want you back.
You want to be working towards graduation. So you want to look at not only your plans and career plans, but your finances. Is that something that you can do if you delay graduation? I also think we would want to make sure that students take the proper steps to make sure that they take a proper leave of absence so that they aren't having any trouble with returning to campus if they did that. Or in the case of our new students, they would definitely want to find out about the university's deferral requirements and what that process is, or, if it's even allowed. It sometimes depends on the university and what your program is. So they would definitely want to consider that and the implications of that for their future plans if they were to delay. I think that some majors lend themselves more naturally to online learning and a virtual experience than others do. Majors and courses that really require that hands-on component, it will be really hard to offer that virtually, but I think each family will have to kind of examine what the student is interested in and what are the kinds of courses that they're going to be taking in the first semester. Are they a new student and they're really working on gen ed kind of requirements, introductory classes, or is this a question of whether your student should return for their third year and they're deep in their major and they might be missing something more important? But I think it's definitely something that they would have to consider on an individual basis. Where are they in their education career? What are they trying to get out of this year? And what is the university offering to support that experience?
We'll rejoin Andrea in just a moment, but first, a segment called Money Matters, brought to you by Penn Fed Credit Union. It doesn't matter whether your student is an incoming freshman or a graduating senior, and it doesn't matter whether they'll be taking classes from their bedroom at home or you'll be driving them hundreds of miles away. Before classes begin this year, you need to speak to your student about money.
It is hard for parents to talk to their kids about personal finance, but you have to do it. It is critical.
That's Jamie Gayton, Executive Vice President of the Pentagon Federal Credit Union, PenFed, who served for 30 years in the U.S. Army after graduating from West Point. He's the author of the Guide to Personal Financial Planning for the Armed Forces and has taught financial literacy courses for the cadets at West Point, family readiness groups throughout the Army, and a variety of other groups and community organizations. Jamie is also the father of 2 teenagers and a young adult. For this episode of College Ready Money Moments, we asked Jamie to speak with us about budgeting, especially during a pandemic.
Nobody likes talking about budgets. Nobody likes living within a budget. Unfortunately, most individuals, they overestimate how much money they're going to bring in, and they tend to underestimate how much money they're going to spend, whether it's on food or books or anything else. The difference between freshman year and college, they're just arriving, they're just figuring out being on their own, they're just figuring out their expenses and how they pay for things, and they're likely to make some mistakes. But by junior and senior year, now it's a function of, are you taking the time to do it, as opposed to, do you know how to do it? Now we have to look at the circumstances that the child is going to be doing potentially online education from home. And so now they're living there, they don't have the room and board costs, they still have the tuition costs. And so you still build a budget, you still look at the revenues coming in, the expenses going out, but some of those now will be shared across the family. So in that respect, it's different. But all of the standard elements, they should have their own checking account, they should have their own savings account, they should have their own credit card so they can learn to start managing those functions as part of them being on their own, even though right now, because of COVID, they're probably sitting in your basement taking their online courses. Nobody wants to be surprised. Parents do not want to be surprised by an unexpected expense, and children do not want to feel like they're not being supported with what they want. The key is communication. The earlier you talk about that, the better off everyone's going to be. Enforcement. So you got choices there as parents. Do I choose to let them put it on a credit card bill and allow them to pay some interest on that as a mechanism to teach them how much it's going to cost if you don't plan and budget appropriately? If you choose to bail them out, on the other hand, what it signals to the child is, hey, my parents will always bail me out, and so I might as well just overspend my budget. So you have to balance. The key, I think, is making sure it's transparent up front by saying ahead of time, if you plan to exceed your budget, you need to talk to us ahead of time so that we can make a joint family decision on how that should happen.
PenFed Credit Union serves over 2 million members worldwide, offering market-leading certificates, checking, credit cards, personal loans, mortgages, auto loans, and student loans, with members' interests always in mind. For more information concerning the personal financial challenges faced by college students, please visit PenFed at penfed.org.
All schools have made it clear that at some point during this coming year, your student will likely be learning from home, at least for a short while. So we asked our experts to tell us what our students need in order to be successful when studying away from the campus environment.
They need to have space where they can interact with their professors. If there's like an audio portion, they need to have their own private space. They also need to have the respect of the family. For me personally, we had a lot of people that came back home during this time of isolation. And so for distance learning, space and respect were very important.
One of the other things along those lines is we've had a number of students and families where, for various reasons, they were not able to have that kind of dedicated space. While we have recommended to every student that they have a computer and, set time that they're on it every day and dedicated space, we know that some of them don't have that, or they had siblings who were coming home who were also utilizing those spaces for remote learning, and various family members who might be working from home as well. So one of the things that really helped is for those students to have communication with their faculty about what their capabilities really were with remote learning. And that went a long way in helping our faculty to help our students to make the most of their classes as well, depending on what kind of space they may or may not have.
The importance of a regular, quiet place for your student to attend virtual classes and study is critical to their success. As James Clear, a behavioral scientist and New York Times best-selling author, has written, quote, "If the context is always changing, so is the behavior. You need a reliable environment," end quote. Beyond a quiet, dedicated space, our guests discuss other lessons learned from the spring 2020 semester that parents can use to help their students succeed academically and deal with the disappointment of not being on campus in the fall.
Family members were really key in helping their students keep focus, helping students stay focused on their work, building schedules to make sure they are spending enough time each day. It's still important for them to really pay attention to their time management and their distractions, which might even be higher now because there will be other students around them. And the professor connection is really important, as you mentioned. Students, as it is, even when classes are in person, sometimes are hesitant to get to know their faculty and don't always make use of office hours. And that's something that's really important. And it's really important in the online environment as well.
We've had to just rewrite how we're encouraging parents. No, we want you to be encourage your students. Like, make sure they're taking care of their health. Make sure your students are getting their healthy sleeping habits. And then how to encourage them without being a helicopter parent at home. It's like a new hat for parents to wear. Like, how do you listen to your student openly without judging what they're doing or how they're spending their time? Because when they're at university, you actually don't see anything that they're doing. So it's like being invited back into their story. And so I think it's been a learning transition for a lot of families to have that reintegration during this time of trying to finish academically and what that might look like going ahead. I think maybe also for families, they realize this is kind of a special time. We may never get this again with our kids, where you get them home to be able to be there. Maybe they had family meals together more than they ever have because people weren't to go anywhere. So many unique things during this unusual time probably happened in families across the world.
We are always talking with families about having that ongoing dialogue with their students. It's okay to ask them, what do you need from me? How can I best support you? And those open-ended kind of questions really go far in that college student-parent relationship. And I think during remote learning is no different. You're spending a lot more time together. Emotions can run high and stress is high, and having that open dialogue is really important. When they're willing to share, you've created that environment where they feel comfortable opening up about how things are going, what might be worrying them. They feel that they can talk to you about that without judgment. And being able to build that relationship with them is really important so that they know they can come to you and you can be that support person for them. Along those lines, your student may want you to be really, really involved. And, over time, we would encourage you to let them be more independent, even if they seem to want you to be involved to that level.
When teens and young adults are in close quarters with their parents, especially under stressful circumstances, there are bound to be conflicts. Once again, experiences gained from the spring 2020 semester have given us some interesting perspectives on how families can coexist constructively.
One of the things that we always talk to families about is when students are home or if they're commuting, being a student is a full-time job. So when they're home, they don't really have time to do a whole lot with the family or contribute to household responsibilities all the time. Or it's ideal if you can make sure you protect that time in their day so they can focus on their studies and not be interrupted. And I think families did a really good job trying to still allow the student to have that separate time, focus on their studies separate from the family, while still being the emotional support and social component for their students, since they couldn't really get that elsewhere.
We had 8 people living in my house during this time, and that's because family all came home, and I have one married daughter who came home with her husband. And because of the unusual situation this world was in, nobody knew anything. So for the first few weeks was like a time of uncertainty and a honeymoon period where people were getting along and were like adjusting, and we're like, oh, this is kind of cool, and everyone finding their space to finish their homework and whatever their work was online. But then as the weeks go on, all of a sudden the honeymoon period wears off and you're like navigating another journey now where you're trying to figure out, okay, that person is really bugging me. And that is reality. And so you have to extend a lot of grace, and you have to extend a lot of reminding to your adult children. In my situation, this is an unusual time. You have to be making sure that your communication levels are up, that if somebody's bugging you, you deal with it. And you don't need to involve the whole family in this, but you have to deal with it. Yeah, it's been a learning curve for me as a mom, putting on my work hat or my mom hat, my mother-in-law hat. There's a lot of hats I wear. And in it all, to be honest, we planned a wedding. So I had another daughter get married. So I've had a lot of hats that I've been wearing as I've navigated this. And the feedback I get from the families in our community have been just trying to make the most of it. And when there's been conflicts, I actually haven't heard about that side of it, to be honest.
I would agree with that. I think there hasn't seemed to be that much conflict, at least that's reaching us where they're asking us for guidance. One of the things that has come up is that a lot of the conversation around college students going home for remote learning has centered around them and families helping them de-stress and stay on track with their studies and everything. And what is kind of left out is the fact that the family members are stressed too. They have a lot on them too, supporting the student, continuing their own work, taking care of other family members and everything else that they do on a day-to-day. So I think one of the things that we really noticed is how can we help the family members take care of themselves as they help take care of our students. And, if that's making sure that they are taking time for themselves each day, getting outside for a walk, being apart, family members got used to their students not being there after they had been there for so long. And then suddenly they were back. And that was a real shift for everybody in their way of living day to day, and a quick shift at that. So that can be hard on everyone, especially when everyone's already in a stressful situation.
Despite the challenges faced by colleges and universities during the pandemic, our guests agree that the nation's colleges and universities are rising to the occasion and providing students with non-traditional learning experiences, which represent the best that our schools have to offer.
This is an unprecedented, unique time for all of us, whether we are family members or students or staff or faculty. We're all going to get through this experience together, and that I just would want to reassure families that there are lots of people who are working really hard to make sure that their students have the best possible experience and as much activity and excitement as they can have around the college experience outside the classroom, and as engaging, meaningful learning experiences inside the classroom, whether that's in person or online, as possible. We all want this to be the best experience for them while also making sure that they are healthy and safe. And I just want to make sure folks know that there's a lot happening to make sure that we deliver that.
Even amidst all this uncertainty, parents and students can find hope and inspiration in the fact that our current situation strengthens the bonds of family, which are essential to every student's success.
One thing that those of us who work in the parent and family world already know is how essential families are to their students' success. Whether they're here on campus or they're at home, when they're learning, family members are one of the top, if not the top factors in their success. Having those folks around you, encouraging you, letting you know that you can do it, motivating you, validating that today might be a hard day and that this isn't an ideal situation and we're going to make it through. You know, those are the people, regardless of what family means for each individual student, those are the people who help the student make it through. And we really saw that when suddenly our students were home with their families and they were able to give them that hands-on help and motivation really around the clock in a way that they hadn't done before. So I think really that just being there piece was the most essential piece, that validation that this is tough and this is a new frontier for all of us, and grieving the loss of the normal, quote unquote, experience really helped students a lot to get that from their family.
So parents, are you ready to go? I'm sure you are. You have some hard decisions and challenging transitions ahead of you. The one thing you can do right now is identify a quiet space where your student can learn and study, because at some point during the upcoming school year, they will likely be learning from home. The other thing you can do is identify the counselors and administrators at your student's college or university who, like Whitney and Janice, are working hard to help you navigate this journey successfully. The more familiar you are with the resources available to you, the more successful you will be in supporting your students and reducing your stress. I'm Andrea McCarren. Thanks for joining us. See you next time on College Ready 2020. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to College Ready 2020 wherever you get your podcasts so that you'll receive future episodes. And please also leave us a review to help others find the show too. For parents of college students, additional guidance can be found at collegeready.guide. This show was created in cooperation with the Association of Higher Education Parent-Family Program Professionals. College Ready 2020 is a production of Wise Action.
Audiation.